Still, these things are not tied to earth. He does not need this earth to know beauty. He does not need this world to know wisdom. He does not require this physical planet on which to stand, nor does he need any of the things which belong to it. For strangely, all things necessary are in himself, and always have been. And in himself is the comradeship and companionship of the eternal. So in our picture, the meditating mystic has suddenly experienced his own existence in a vast and infinite area of eternal being. In his meditation, he has left the world behind. Although he may still be seated upon old earth itself, he has forgotten it. He looks out with a clarified vision and beholds only the stars and space and himself. And he looks out from within himself to the outer part of himself. He looks from his soul through his eyes. And his soul is the boy and his eyes are the ox. They are still two beings, but they have become much closer. And it is through the eyes of the ox that the boy sees the fields of space, even as the meditating mystic is aware by his inner sensory perception of his own relationship to both time and eternity. He still is. He still experiences the strange, fleeting sense of selfness. As long as self remains, the ox is there. But the ox in space, like the self in space, is at disadvantage, because space does not belong to selves. It belongs to eternities. So it is only reasonable and natural that we should turn the next page, and suddenly we have another peculiar situation. We are back again to the situation we started with. We are back to the point where the boy is standing again in the garden, or by the side of the cliffs and mountains on the edge of a precipice overlooking the sea, and above him also are clouds and mountains, and the sky, the constellation, shines forth. The boy holds up his hands in amazement. There is no bull. Something has happened. This very ethereal bull that was floating around on the clouds has now vanished utterly. And in this vanishment of the bull, in the ancient concept of the mystic meditation, the individual has simply extinguished the sense of separateness between its own nature and every other nature in space. And as the Swami Vivekananda tells us in his work on Raja Yoga, there is suddenly only one. And if we want to say that from one perspective to another, we can say this one is myself. Or we can also, with equal propriety, say this one is something else, everything else. But if the one is self, then everything is part of self. If the one is the something else, then I am part of something else, because there can only be one. And it is either I or not I. If it is I include all. If it is not I, then I am included in all. And the boy holds up his hands in astonishment. The whole mystery of duality has vanished in the Pythagorean monad. And here it is hard to know what really happened to the ox. Whether the boy has transmuted the ox into himself, whether he has cast aside the instrumentality of the sensory perception, whether they have been absorbed back into the spirit from which they came, whether man now experiences with new faculties, faculties that are no longer individualized or personified, but have an enduring existence in a universal condition. And in any event, man reaches what might be termed in Buddhism the Bodhisattva experience. He comes very close now to the portals of the Supreme Mystery. He has observed one by one everything vanishing away. Each step of the path, something that was dark has become lighter. Something that has become lighter has become fainter. Until at last, there's nothing really left but a point of consciousness. It is as though a person was passing slowly into sleep. The last memory was this strange sense of existence. No longer where we exist or how we exist or what moves or motivates our existence, but just this one fleeting realization that we must exist. Because without this existence, we could not know that our existence was slipping away. So there is this mysterious movement in which nothing remains of the elaborate complex of self, of person, of things, of emotions, of appetites, of desires, of ambitions, of hopes, and fears, and resolutions. Now there is nothing remaining of these things except a kind of conscious watcher, a beholder of things that can behold everything but itself, but has reached that point in which there is no longer anything to behold. And we come to the very edge of our supreme problem. Namely, if there is no illusion in man, if there is no further retention of worldliness, if there is no link between the individual and the corporeality which he has left behind, then is it not true that in meditation the world fades out? That all these things have a ceasing because they no longer are needed, and that which is not necessary does not endure. So the boy, to his astonishment, sees the whole elaborate pageantry of his own nature evaporate. He sees his memory and his mind and his thoughts and his feelings all fading away. Yet in a mysterious manner he exists, for he is capable of seeing them fade. He is capable of surviving the loss of the bull, which means that the individual life, the consciousness in man, is capable of surviving the death of the mind. And this is one of the great points in Zen philosophy. And I think it is one of the points that will sometime have to be reconsidered in Western psychology, where we're going to have to realize that it is the thought that produces the thinker, and not the thinker producing the thought. That in the beginning was not the mind, but the thought. And the thought was everywhere and in everything. And in order to express itself, the thought brought forth the mind. And the mind became the instrument, and thought and soul the mind. But the mind can die again, and the thought remains. And this thought is a kind of vagrant sense of existence, moving and floating upon the deep sea of meditation. And in it we find the concept of the bodhisattvic life, in which by degrees the individual comes so close to the dividing line between the state of being and the state of eternity that he can hardly realize which he occupies at any given time. And so we then turn the diagram from this to the 10th figure, the last of the figures. And what do we have? The boy is gone. The ox is gone. The trees are gone. And all that remains is the Zen Taoist symbol of eternity, the circle. This is the circle that a good Zen priest can draw with one stroke of the brush, and it will be perfect. A perfect circle drawn freehand. But in this circle is the end of the mystery, either for Taoism or for Zen. For now there is nothing that remains except the infinite mystery itself. The mystery of the Samadhi, the mystery of the Mahaparinirvana, the mystery of the dying out of all the fires of existence, the end of suffering, the end of the long road that leads to the end of suffering. There is no longer the shepherd or the ox. There is no longer that which causes pain or that which experiences pain. There is no longer the thought flying out like a bird seeking a place to land. There is no longer any land. There is no longer anything except the infinite expanse of the inevitable itself. And this, as the Buddhist says, the drop of water has returned to the infinite ocean. All separateness has ceased. All condition as we know it has ceased. And if you wish to know the incredible profundity of this mystery, you only have to remember that it happens to you every night when you go to sleep. Suddenly, you are not. And yet, not having an existence, you are never aware completely or totally of the end of an existence. And suddenly, in the morning, you awaken again, out of not-existence into existence again. And you pick up the threads and strains of life, and you go on. And each little day we live is rounded by a sleep. And all of us can sometimes wonder where the dream really is. Whether man is dreaming of strange things or whether strange things are dreaming of man. We do not know, but we depend upon certain orientations to clarify. There are examples known in which dream life and active life have been so closely interrelated that it has been impossible for the individual to tell which was the dream and which the reality. This is part of our problem. But Zen ends not in a frustration, in the sense that Western scholars have insisted on assuming that the Buddhists were nihilists, that they were some strange type of extinctionists, in which to them the supreme end of everything was to be nothing. This is the first thought that may come to mind. The idea that the only way you can escape from pain is to die. The only way you can escape from your mind is for the mind to die, or for you to die and leave the mind behind. This is not really the substance of the matter at all, however. For there is a great deal more to this Buddhist philosophy than extinction. We have extinguished the man, and we have extinguished the ox. The world is gone, and nothing but the circle remains. And the circle is reality. But how shall we estimate the nature of reality? Have we right to say how deep it is, or how wide? Have we any way of estimating what is locked within it? Do we know what potentials may emerge from it? We have the experience here of beholding an unknown, or coming into the presence of a mystery. Perhaps one may